it's chapter 25. No, really, chapter 25 is much more detailed and much more elaborate than, and I will reduce, I will make it even more synthetic by simply going back to the model that we put forward yesterday, okay? So, we saw that the rate of profit in the classical Korn model, if the labor theory of value holds, the Korn model and the multi-commodity labor theory of value system are exactly the same thing. Okay, they operate exactly in the same way. You follow? Yeah. So the rate is alpha minus Wn minus 1. Okay? Where alpha is the output per unit of capital, W is the wage per unit of labor, N is the number of workers needed to operate 1 unit of capital, and 1 is simply the depreciation, which is assumed to be 100%. Okay? Do you agree with me on that? Yes, remember? Yesterday I put D instead of 1 because depreciation is 100%, D becomes 1, so. Right, so couple of things to see that I've done in terms of partial derivative. Negative, right? Rate of profit and wage rate are strictly inversely related. Then the rate of profit is positively related to alpha, okay? And the rate of profit is negatively related to N, right? Because it's minus sign, so they're negatively related. So when N goes up, rate of profit down. You follow? But when N is the number of workers needed to operate 1 unit of machinery. So when N goes up, rate of profit down. But N does not go up because of mechanization. We usually go down.
Sorry, what was N?
N is the number of workers per unit of capital. Remember that employment is defined in terms of NK. How many workers are needed to operate? How many workers can be fitted into a factory? The number of workers that can fit into a factory is technically determined. It's determined by the technological configuration of the factory. I need 500 workers, 25, whatever, 30 engineers, 50, 60, 100 technicians, etc. etc. That's all determined by the nature of the production, right? It's essentially technologically determined, not precisely determined technologically, but the core is determined technologically. So this is the coefficient of production, labor coefficient of production.
This is 3 with 0. I didn't quite get it.
This means that if the rate of change in the rate of profit, okay,
Yes.
is inversely related to the wage rate. That's the partial derivative. Okay, 0, negative, less than 0. And if capital becomes more productive, rate of profit goes up. Everything else being the same, and that you take the partial derivative, so it's positive today, so it's greater than 0. Then if this goes up, right, the rate of profit falls.
Yes.
Okay? But this will not go up, this will go down. This is still correct. If N goes down, okay, because there's a minus sign, minus sign here, minus variation of N is plus, okay? So this means that if this goes down, the rate of profit goes up. So they're always inversely related. So more mechanized system should increase the rate of profit. Okay? Now, the second aspect I want to show is that this is also under strict assumption, is also the rate of profit is also equal to the growth rate of capital, to the growth rate of the economy, therefore. The rate of profit, growth rate and the rate of profit are the same thing under assumptions that I will now make clear. Okay? So remember that the rate of profit is P over K. Okay? Now also remember that P is Y minus W minus the depreciation of capital. It is minus capital, but P is equal to 1. Okay, 100%. That's what the net rate of profit is. Okay? Yeah.
Could you just repeat what was P over K?
P is profit.
P over K.
Rate of profit.
Ah, the rate.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah? That's the rate of profit. So, this means, okay, that this is, should, under assumption that I will now make clear, is equal to savings. This is equal to savings under the following assumption that savings in the economy can be the result of savings out of profit, the percentage of profit saved, plus the percentage of wages saved. Okay? But remember that in the classic, the assumption is that savings out of wages don't exist because wages are at subsistence. So SW is equal to 0. Okay, so this disappears. Because if 0 times W is 0. Yeah? So we have to focus on this. Again, one of the, and that's particularly strong in Marx and Adam Smith. Adam Smith says, every frugal man a public benefactor. Right? In Adam Smith, savings is the factor that creates investment. So savings are automatically in the, for the classics, the idea that you save only for investing, in order to invest, there is no other reason why there should be savings. The only reason to save is to invest. So, and in Marx, says accumulate, this is the Moses, the Bible, and everything, etc. Well, that means the accumulation of savings for investment, or as a result of all the profits. The objective role of the capitalist firm is to invest profits. That's it, is to invest the profits, okay? That's the objective role. The rest is irrelevant. It's not where you have Rolls Royces, etc., etc. Doesn't matter. It's not important. What is the objective role of the capitalist system is to accumulate capital, okay? And the accumulation of capital means that profits are invested. That's it. That you have to invest on the profits. If you don't invest on it, then the system moves to something else. It's a different story. So this means that SP is equal, for theoretical purposes, is equal to 1. All savings are invested. Okay? All savings, there is no consumption out of savings. The capitalists are pure Max Weber capitalists. It's Max Weber. What does Max Weber in the Protestant Ethics and the Spirit of Capitalism? The famous book by Max Weber says that why there is being capitalists in the northern countries, in the Protestant countries, because there is the ethics of savings, right? That's what Max Weber. Well, that's already in the classics. That's in Adam Smith, and that is in Karl Marx, and it's also in Ricardo. That the role of savings is for investment, and therefore the only rationale for savings is for investment. There's no consumption out of savings. Okay. For theoretical purposes, we can treat it as meaning no consumption out of savings. So this means that S is equal to P. Okay, and P is equal to investment. Okay, you follow?
Sorry, what was SP equal to 1?
SP equal to 1
Yeah.
means that all profits are saved.
Okay.
Yeah. Then investment means, what does investment mean? Investment means that you add to the stock of capital. You follow me? So if you have, say, you have 100 sacks of corn, 100 tons of corn, less, say, 50 tons for wages, okay, 50 for wages, and then less, let's say, 20 for replanting, for depreciation. So you have 100 minus 70 tons. This means that 30 tons are net investment. That's a particular high level of net investment of 30% over national income. It's a very high, well, China has 50% over national income. China, the rate of investment over national income is 50%. So, yeah, you follow?
Yeah.
Okay. So this means that you have 30 more tons of investment of corn relatively to last year for investment. So this addition to the stock of capital, do you follow me? To the things that operate as capital. Therefore, I can write this as delta K. So once I take again the rate of profit, divide everything by capital, S over K equal P over K, which is equal to the rate of profit, which is equal to investment over capital, which is equal to the increment of capital. This is by how much, by what percentage capital increases, right? Delta K is the increase in capital. And this is equal to G, to the growth rate of capital in the economy. So rate of profit, you can see the rate of profit is equal to the growth rate. Under the strict, do you understand? The rate of profit comes out to be equal to the growth rate. You follow? You must make this assumption, the assumption that no wages are saved and no profits are consumed. No wages are saved and no profits are consumed. All profits go to investment and all wages are consumed. But that's consistent with the classical view that wages are at subsistence, so that they're all spent on consumption. Okay? And it is consistent also with the classical view that the role of capital, of the capitalist of the firm, is to invest its own profit. That's what the role is. Not easy. That's the role of
Equals to the rate of growth.
G is the growth rate.
Yes. Okay. I understand.
Yeah. No?
Yes.
Now this is a very simple formulation. Yeah.
Excuse me, but you said that investment was equal to the net profit, and how comes it that it is equal to gross profit?
Hmm?
You said in the beginning that investment is equal to
Yeah.
net profit.
Yeah, and this is net profit
But this
because
is gross profit, G.
no, this is growth.
Gross
Ah,
profit.
It's growth. Yeah. It's not gross profit. It's growth, expansion. Yeah. So this simple formulation, it took a long. It is all in classical economics, so it's not so. It's used with words, okay, with words, and it's actually it was made clear by a guy who became very famous in mathematics and computing and computer science. Okay, I don't know whether you have seen the movie Doctor Strangelove. You know, with Peter Sellers. Do you know Peter Sellers? About Peter Sellers, huh? The great British actor Peter Sellers. And there is a movie by Stanley Kubrick, the great movie director Stanley Kubrick, who did Clockwork Orange and he produced a movie which is called Doctor Strangelove, and it's the story of nuclear war, right? Which basically an American plane, B-52 bomber, they sort of wrong, something computed wrong. This is in the 60s. A wrong, faulty operation in the computer system in the United States that they show a Soviet attack, okay? And so the Air Force takes, the Strategic Air Command, the nuclear armed B-52 bombers, they take off, and eventually, I don't know whether it was Khrushchev or Brezhnev, yeah, but it was the President of the United States speaks with the Soviet president, and they manage to clear that. But one plane shut itself off, went into complete secret mode, and then manages to actually go and bomb. And this means automatic reply, the Soviet Union start, and then the whole thing blows up in smoke, okay? Now the security system, the entire security system of the United States, alert and security system, is designed by Dr. Strangelove, which is Peter Sellers, and Peter Sellers is a German in the case of, in the movie. He's a German, like von Braun used to be a German that was taken by the Americans after the Second World War, and he's on a wheelchair, so he's paralyzed, he's on a wheelchair, he's a scientist, crazy scientist, and when he speaks, so he's brought into the Oval Office by the president, into the special bunker of the president, because everything is about to blow up, and when he speaks, he cannot hold himself, and he has a sort of paralyzed arm, But the paralyzed arm, when he speaks, becomes that's fantastic, Peter Sellers. So when he speaks, the arm goes like the arm goes like this. He talks about the necessity to protect hierarchical genetic structures, etc., etc. So his arm, when he speaks like that, it goes like this. And this person is not a fake person. This is the first person is Johann von Neumann. And John in America, von Neumann, because he was a Hungarian-Austrian economist, a mathematician, pure mathematician, who is the inventor of the automatic machines at Princeton University. He set up the automatic machines, self-reproducing machine. He invented this machine. So he's a very, very important mathematician. And this Johann, he was, if not really, really Nazi almost, okay? And that's why Peter Seller embodies von Neumann. But von Neumann, one of his first things that he did was in economics in the 30s in Austria. He published it in German, and it was discovered by a British economist, but he was Hungarian by origin. He became member of the House of Lords, and he was professor at Cambridge, Nicholas Calvin. And von Neumann developed a complete classical production model, complete with many commodities, very complicated because he had different type of productions in it, very advanced mathematically, in which comes out that the growth rate in many commodities, under the assumption that SW is equal 0 and SP is equal 1, the growth rate, even with many different commodities, is equal to the rate of profit. So this simple version, core model version, is validated by the von Neumann model, which was published in England, the Review of Economic Studies, I think 1945. It's a very complicated mathematical model. It's not a simple model to. I studied it, but it's a long story in terms of the mathematics involved. So it's also valid under many commodities. Under the assumption of no, so this is actually a very important validation of the classical work. He did two things in economics. He did that model, and then with another Austrian who migrated to the United States, Oscar Morgenstern, they really invented game theory. They wrote in 1949, I think, they wrote a book on game theory. And after that, he only worked for CIA, for bombs and missiles and all that sort of stuff. So this basically is the von Neumann condition. That's what I want to say. That he made explicit what is implicit in classical economics. Okay, that's the rate of growth and the rate of profit are the same under those conditions. Okay, once we get this, the story of Marx, we go back, is absolutely clear. You don't even need this story becomes absolutely clear. And so I will now repeat it. Okay, the profit equal to the growth rate equal to alpha minus WN minus 1, and with the conditions that an increase in profit relatively to wage is negative. This also means negative, so it's exactly the same, right? And an increase in profit relatively to alpha is positive. I just repeat this thing. Positive, and that will be true also for growth and increase over. Okay. Now having said this, and remembering that the rate of growth is equal to the growth to the rate of profit, they are both the same thing, then we can start the story, and that's my story. So I'll start with my story. I'll start from book 8, which is the theory of primitive accumulation. So at the beginning, in Marx, the capitalist mode of production emerges from pre-capitalist conditions. So from the breakdown of the feudal mode of production. You understand? The fundamental features of the capitalist mode of production is that it has more productive power, it's technologically more advanced, okay, than the artisan type. So artisan can be sophisticated. You know, it's only if you look at the history of the textile in Italy and Britain, okay? Italy had the most advanced textile production in Europe, at least in Europe, okay? Most advanced in terms of sophistication of the product, in terms of the quality, sophistication of the product. It did not have the economies of scale. The British, by having especially the spinning machine and the jenny, it's called the jenny, the famous jenny invented by, they developed more economies of scale. Their products were lower quality than Italian ones. Yeah? I'm talking about early 19th century, late 17th century, late 18th century. They were much lower quality than Italian ones, but they had greater economies of scale. They could produce more, and they could therefore conquer markets and reduce prices. And this is why basically affected, wiped out, or reduced the capacity of Italian textile industry. The Italian textile industry, which is mostly around Milan and then down to Florence and those places, basically these were the areas, reacted, Milan, the north and Tuscany. The Italian textile industry reacted because they did not have the economies of scale, they did not have the technological capacity of the British. How did they react? They reacted by withdrawing into luxury products. Yeah, but luxury products, you cannot produce many of them. If you move into the luxury, you have a much more restricted market. And therefore, by withdrawing into luxury products, they actually left the market open to British textile, to the British textile thing. You see? So that's why throughout the 19th century, the industrialization meant textile industry, right? Because of this capacity of the British invented the machines necessary to generate economies of scale in textile. Like later on, in say machine making and steel making capacity, it was the Germans with Bessemer. They developed the German steel, which basically wiped out this, because the British steel industry was very primitive, was based on coal stuff. And the Germans came with chemical processes, with advanced chemical processes, with advanced metallurgical processes through the Bessemer method, and they completely, basically displaced the British, or compelled the British to adopt similar technology, which they never reached the level of the German technology. And so, in other words, what I want to say is that the capitalist mode of production manifests itself not necessarily with better quality goods, but with more technological capacities, therefore greater economies of scale. Okay? And this is exactly the same that happens in food. You know, in food, large-scale food production is not necessarily good. Now we know that it's not good. Look at the United States; they produce crap, and they don't produce good stuff. You know, large-scale agribusiness is not good, but it has the advantage of the market because it can produce more cheaply and it can conquer markets, whereas small type of productions cannot. So in the capitalist, in the early stages, the capitalist core is small, but more greater capacity to develop economies of scale. Do you follow me? And in order to bring to fruition that capacity, in order to capitalize on that capacity, it has to develop a sort of symbiotic relations with the hinterland, with the raw material sector, right? So think of Britain, because the Marx model is Britain. You know, Marxist thinking developed in 3 stages. First, Marx took Britain as the model. He even wrote down about Germany, I'm telling what will happen to you in the future. Yeah? Because he says, de te fabula narratum, about Germany in Latin, which means this is the story about you, about Germany. And looking at Britain, because in the end he was also quite a German nationalist. So his thinking was about Germany, so about why is that Germany not like Britain? You know, and there was a lot of that in his writing. So he takes Britain as a model. With the Russian Marxism and the development of Marxism in Germany, but essentially with Russian Marxism, Rosa Luxemburg, which is both Russian, Polish, and German, okay? The model becomes Germany, because Germany replaced Britain. The Russian Marxists understood that Germany was more advanced than Britain in terms of industry and stuff like that. Then the last is under Stalin. I don't know whether you can consider Stalin a Marxist or not. You know, Stalin was Stalin, okay? But under Stalin, what is the model? What is the economic model in the Soviet Union during the first 5-year plan, second 5-year plan, the famous Stalinist period? Yeah? The economic model was not Germany, was not Britain, was United States. They modeled everything on the United States. Everything. Mikoyan. You know who Mikoyan was? For a while he was president of the Soviet Union. He was member of the Politburo, was a very important member of the Stalinist group, so to speak. Those who survived. Because, in fact, he survived because he was sent to the United States. That's why he survived. He was sent to the United States to study department stores, to develop department stores like you have in the United States. Like today you have, what's called the famous one that is, you can buy everything online from the house. It's the famous, it's the largest employer in the United States.
Walmart companies?
Huh?
eBay?
No, eBay, no.
Amazon?
No, not Amazon, they are the largest employer.
Walmart.
Yeah. And he was sent to the United States to replicate in the Soviet Union the same type of department stores. But of course, they couldn't, for a simple reason that in order to have the same type of department, you must have big consumption, and there was no big consumption. Therefore, they didn't go much beyond the boom like type of department stores. But that was Moscow subway, Moscow Underground. Who was the chief engineer in Moscow Underground? And Stalin ordered to be in the Moscow Underground. Was the New York chief engineer. The plan was the architect was New York. The first big automobile factory, which is actually near Moscow, it's in Moscow, that was developed. It was, I don't remember, it was Ford that set it up in the 1930s. It was Ford. So, in the Soviet Union, the model was America. Everything had to be based on the American model. Because Stalin even said that. He even said that in one of the congresses of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. He said, if we don't follow the same model of the United States, we'll become small producers. We stay small. We have to develop big stuff. Big stuff is America is big, right? So big stuff is in America. And therefore, they modeled everything on the basis of the United States. Just about the notion of large-scale production was America with German technology of the 1930s. Basically, that's how they did. So the model of Marx is England. It's very important because this also gives you historical context because they may not be necessarily the same, you see, as history evolves and changes. So the reference is that primitive initial accumulation he connects it to the case, the history of the enclosures. You know the enclosures. You know the story of the enclosures. And well, until really the Cromwell, that was Cromwell, the bourgeois revolution in Britain was Cromwell. The land was essentially socialized land. Okay, it belonged to the churches. Yeah, but people could live on the land of the church. They ate cabbages and that sort of stuff, and that's about it. They didn't live particularly well. I'm not saying that they had that. But they live on the land as a matter of natural right, kind of natural right. When textile development started, they needed the land, right? Capital needed the land. Why they needed the land? Because first you have to produce food for workers. It has to be not food that you are like a zombie. Right? It has to be a bit, more food that you can at least end the day, you may drop dead by the after, but that's okay. But at least you have to work during the day. So they needed substantial amount of food, flows of food, transportation of food to the cities for the workers. The second thing, and that's the most important thing, they needed raw materials. Because where do the textile come from? Most of them were actually from wool. Cotton was imported from other places and there wasn't much. But it was from wool. And therefore you needed to put sheep on the land, right? But the land was occupied by people because there was that. Therefore they set up the enclosures. This means privatization of the land. The land becomes capitalistic. So you put enclosures in Ireland, you put enclosures in Scotland, you put enclosures. So, and what you do with the people who are in the enclosure, because meanwhile, so you have to bring those there, okay? But on the land there are people that are living in a sort of naturalistic form, okay? So what do? You kick them out, very simple. That's what Marx calls it, primitive accumulation. There are no legal contracts, etc. You just kick them out. Accumulation must start as an act of force, of brute force. So you kick them out, okay? You kick them out and you put the sheep, etc., etc. They destroyed Ireland in the process. Huh? It's not that it was something. Ireland is the only Western European country which came very near to what today they use this term in inflationary way, but came very near Holocaust, what they call Holocaust. They don't like this term Holocaust. They came very near to a genocidal situation because in 1848 they had a very big famine that there were 4 million people and it killed more than 1 million, the famine, and then another 1 million left, went to the United States. And so 2 million. In a few years, 2 million people were vanished from, and that was the result of the land tenure in the one that was designed by Sir William Petty nearly 200 years before, which was entirely aimed at sustaining the process of capital accumulation and landlord rent as well in Britain. That was in not continental, in the Big Britain, not Ireland, but Big Britain. And so, therefore, therefore, this is a form of imperialism, in other words, okay? As the core expands into the country because it needs raw materials and food from the country, it also needs labor. So labor is provided, number one, by the fact that the people who were living and eating cabbages, okay, being a bit zombified with cabbages, just not much calories and stuff, but they were eating, they have nothing else. They've been kicked out of the land. That's why they become. So everything in Marx is analytically specified. Nothing is random. Not one word is emotional. He writes in Hegelian terms, so it appears to be emotional. It's not emotional. It's always analytically very specific. They become proletarians. Why they become proletarians? Because the only thing that they have is really children. they don't have means of subsistence. They lost the cabbages, but cabbages now are being given to the sheep, okay? And then the whole place is transformed in sheep walk or in horticulture for the cities to feed the working population in the cities. So they have absolutely nothing left. So they get kicked out and they migrate from the countryside, think of Lancashire, Manchester, etc., or Ireland, and they migrate to the cities. And they become workers. But because they migrate to the city, this is very important. The impact on wages are low. So in mass, there is a supply and demand mechanism for the determination of wages. Of course, wages cannot fall below subsistence. On average, they cannot fall below, on average over the cycle. But in the situation in which there is mass supply of labor, migration from the country to the city, wages fall, and they fall also below subsistence. Okay? So because of all that, wages begin to fall. So the first stage is wages go down. If wages go down, from all these conditions, technical conditions do not change. That's all another aspect of primitive accumulation. The technical conditions don't change. Okay? You kicked out the people from the countryside, you make them migrate to the towns.
Sorry, why did they get kicked out?
Huh?
Why did they get kicked out?
Because the country has to become capitalistic.
So they use
They have to put sheep walks, they have to put sheep, they have to put all that sort of stuff to produce wool, right? So the people were living on the land.
Oh, okay, I thought you meant the farmers.
Yeah, they were not farmers. They were just people living on the land like in pre-Cromwell England, okay? They were just people zombified on the land, like Chaucer, in Chaucer times, you know? And so you create a supply, an oversupply of labor which reduces wages. Reduces wages? Yeah, the inverse relationship between the rate of profit and wages accumulation goes up. Okay? Then there's another factor which reduces wages. The other factor is, perhaps I should, because I see that people don't see anymore. And another factor which reduces wages is the fact that the same process happens within the towns. Although it's not so important because urban population, if you talk about 18th century Britain and stuff like that, urban population was minimal compared to the total population in Britain, say during the period of the Napoleonic Wars, etc., would have been 15 to 14 million, something like that. Was slightly above 10 million, 14 million, etc. 10 million in France, was a bit more in Britain. And you would say that out of that, 80%, 85% lived in the country. So the important point is the country, not the town. But also in the town, in the towns, things happen. Because this core, as I say, is more competitive. It has economies of scale. It's technologically more advanced than artisan production. And artisan production is better quality. However, it's more limited in size, right? In output. So, in this core, they can produce, and also they enjoy lower wages. They can produce a cheaper product, and as a result, they bring to ruination. They make petty commodity producers. Artisans go bankrupt. So the artisans themselves become workers. They have to offer themselves because they lose their jobs, and they have to become proletarians. They start working in the factories rather than being artisans. You follow? You understand that?
So can you repeat why? Can you repeat that, please? Why?
That the same process that happens in the countryside happens also in the towns, because the capitalist core is technologically more efficient, although not necessarily better quality, and can produce greater economies of scale, lower cost, The result is that the artisans are made to go bankrupt. They go bankrupt. Okay? Yeah, they go bankrupt, and as a result, they lose their jobs and they have to become workers. They have to offer their labor to the capitalistic firms. Okay? So, when this happens, everything works for capital accumulation because wages go down. Okay? Because if you have oversupply of labor or systemic oversupply of labor, wages go down. You follow? So you have rural unemployment, which becomes urban employment, but through competition, and therefore it reduces the wage. Okay, so that's the first stage. But this stage reaches a limit. The limit is determined by technology to begin with. So there is a limit to which you can draw people from the countryside. Depends on the technology, how much labor saving technology you use in the country, using agriculture. There is a limit to which you can push this process. As the process in each stage reaches this limit, the economy moves. The process gets reversed. The economy moves toward what today we would call full employment. Yeah? So the economy draws people from the country, okay? But there is a limit to that because they still have to produce wheat, they produce corn in order to feed the cities. And this is determined by the technology which is available. Okay? As a consequence, if the process of influx into the cities and absorption of the people from rural into urban areas exceeds what the technology can generate as additional food and raw materials, then a limit is reached. This limit defines the conditions of full employment. Essentially, the system moves toward, it doesn't call it full employment, but it means that labor, the supply of labor becomes not as easy to obtain as before, okay? And when this happens, wages begin to rise. Okay? Wages begin to rise. When the supply of labor becomes limited, relatively, capital accumulation is the factor that creates in the process, because capital accumulation tends to be unlimited. So what limits capital accumulation is the availability of labor and the availability of food for labor, okay? So when this limit, given the technological conditions, is reached, the economy can be said to be near a situation of full employment. And therefore, when the economy approaches full employment, wages rise. When wages rise, well, you get a profit squeeze. You get a fall in the rate of profit. The economy goes into a recession, in other words. The economy goes into a downswing. Let's use downswing, downturn, rather than recession. Because recession can be confused with what today we mean recession.
Sorry, which was this last term?
Downswing, to swing downward, downswing. So, now, this does not mean that capitalist accumulation will stop, because the economy is always driven by competition. And the only way, so capitalistic firms are subject to a profit squeeze, because now we have reversed the situation. We have reversed because we have exhausted the supply of labor. We have absorbed, let's assume that we have absorbed all what can be absorbed from the rural areas into the cities, into the factories and so forth, the offices, and wages start rising, and they rise more than productivity, okay, because there is a balance of power is on the side of labor, they can bargain better, and wages increase more in such a way that the rate of profit falls. Under competition, the capitalists cannot increase prices. We are back to what I said before. They cannot increase prices. So the increase in wages impacts upon profits, rate of profit, investment, and capital accumulation. So capital accumulation gets squeezed down. So the economy, the growth rate slows down. Remember that the rate of profit and the growth rate here are the same. The economy slows down. And at this point, competition compels firms to react. And how do they react? Well, the factor that created the profit squeeze is the increase in wages. The increase in wages was itself determined by capital accumulation because capital accumulation was so strong that it drew so many people into production, right? So, what happens in Marx is that there is a bias, it's a correct bias, by the way, toward labor-saving technology. Because the factor that squeezed profits are the increase in wages, well, capitalistic firm will start demanding labor-saving machinery, that is to say, more mechanized machinery to save labor, okay? So they will start demanding machinery that reduces N, that brings N down, okay? Remember that whenever N comes down, the rate of profit goes up, huh? So, N comes down, you see the rate of profit goes up because minus N variation of N plus, therefore the rate of profit goes up. But a fall in N also means structural unemployment. It means technological unemployment. Because less work, so we have less investment because the rate of profit has been squeezed, okay? And you also have technological unemployment because whatever investment is left is going to replace, it's machinery which is replacing labor. And therefore, workers get kicked out because of the labor-saving technology which is being introduced. But the factor which really recreates mass unemployment is that not all firms will be able to undertake this type of change. That under competitions, many firms will fail, okay? Because of credit and debt conditions. And Marx is very clear about that. Therefore, these firms will close down. And this creates mass unemployment, which this mass unemployment is defined by Marx as industrial reserve army of labor. He doesn't call it unemployment. The term did not exist in the 1920s. There was no such a term as unemployment, okay? Why is called it? It gives the military term, reserve army of labor. This reserve army, and I'm going to explain it in a second. This reserve army of labor defines the specific law of population in capitalistic context. You understand what I mean? Specific law. Every social system, according to Marx, has its own demographic law. So in this way, he is very much very critical of Malthus, of also the classics, Adam Smith, and so forth, who relied on natural law, more food, more population. Right? That was the argument of Malthus, that if there is, that people breed according to the food intake, more food, more. Marx says for capitalists, understanding capitalist accumulation is totally irrelevant, because the dynamics of capital accumulation is like saying that if you build say I have a friend, I mean, in the Rome gym I go to, is a friend who is a person whom I knew who became friend. And he was chief engineer in Selenia, which is building missiles. He's a missile engineer. He builds missile, NATO missiles, and all that sort of stuff. He's an engineer, equation, missiles engineer. And he explained to me that when they build he specialized in air to navy missiles and navy to plane missiles. That's what he specialized in. He specialized because now he's retired. He's more or less my age, 2-3 months older. And he says that when they calculate the missile range and especially the precision of the missile, the ship is air to ship missile is assumed to be still, right? Because the speed of the ship relatively to the speed of the missile is like zero. Right? It's like being, how much can the ship maneuver when the missile comes at 2,000 kilometers an hour? It doesn't make any sense. Therefore, they calculate the ship position as if it was not moving at all, because it makes no difference at what speed the ship goes for the missile. The speed of the missile is so much bigger that it reduces to zero the position of the ship. The same thing is in the case of Marx in relation to Malthusian theory of population. That this Malthusian theory whereby population increases because people breed as a result of more food, for capital accumulation, it's irrelevant because the speed of capital accumulation is like exactly the missile relative to the speed of the ship. So the speed of natural demographic changes stands to the speed of the rate of profit and the rate of capital accumulation, exactly like the missile stands to the missile being the rate of accumulation and the ship being the demographic changes. Okay, so you can have what, 2%. If you have 3% demographic change again, it's really a big demographic explosion already. Okay, and certainly there wasn't that much then, and 3% demographic change. That's nothing for capital accumulation that has to produce a much higher rate in the case of in Marx's vision. Therefore, he rejects Malthusian theory completely. Malthusian theory of population based on food and population growth is rejected, okay, for capitalism. For capitalism, what matters is the dynamics of population relative to capital itself, which is engendered, which is generated by capital itself. And this dynamic of population is characterized by the formation, the periodic, cyclical formation of the industrial reserve army of labor. That's the law of population in Marx, the industrial reserve army of labor. So, when the profit squeeze starts, because they have exhausted all the resources, so the first stage is wages rise and profits get squeezed, investment falls. Second stage is you have more mechanized machinery coming into, and that kicks out workers, technological unemployment, okay? And finally, the third stage, that's the most important, is that firms will go bankrupt. Many firms will go bankrupt, and this creates mass unemployment. That is the reserve army of labor, okay? Why is reserve army of labor? Because it's a reserve army. It's like soldiers in reserve. Soldiers in reserve, instead they have to be ready to fight again. Okay, that's otherwise we won't keep soldiers in reserve, right? We put soldiers in reserve because they have to fight. The reserve army is the same thing. It's unemployment necessary for accumulation, for working. And how does it happen? It happens in the following way. It happens the fact that when you have mass reserve army of labor, after all these three stages have manifested themselves, these workers will reduce wages. And then at this time, accumulation will pick up. Why? On an expanded basis, because now the economy is technologically more advanced, because we introduced more advanced machinery. So the new cycle will be on an expanded basis because the economy, meanwhile, has undergone technological change. The technological change is in itself induced by accumulation. That is to say, that when the profit squeeze comes, the way in which capitalistic firms can save themselves, not all will be able to do that, but those who can save themselves, many will save themselves, then they introduce more technologically advanced machinery, and therefore the capacity of the economy to expand further is enhanced. You see, that's you can see the dialectical process in Marx in this way. So unemployment, the crisis is like a fire in the forest, fire in forest. Because I've been living in Australia for so many, fire in forest, and there's always fire in the summer. A huge fire, it's 1,000 kilometers of fire. Australia is a big place, not as big as Russia, but it's big. Or China, it's almost as big. China is 9.5 million square kilometers. Australia is 7.5, 7.6 million square kilometers. Russia is infinite, it's 15 million. Even after the Soviet Union was 21 million square kilometers. They lost 6 million with Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan and all that sort of. Kazakhstan was big, 2 point something. And still there are 15 million. So it never ends. It never ends. It simply never ends. And but in Australia there are many fires. Some fires are bad, especially those which are connected to urban areas. Not because people burn. People also burn, but because they are created for. But some fires, usually to rejuvenate a forest, you need a fire. The fire is the mechanism which rejuvenates the forest. The crisis is the mechanism which rejuvenates capitalism in Marx. You understand? Do you follow me? Yeah. And so there is a guy that was at Cambridge University that was an American physicist who was essentially communist. He basically got kicked out of the United States, could not find a job in the United States, ended up in Cambridge, and he's a mathematician. He died, Richard Goodwin, and then he got a professorship late in his life, more or less my age now. At the age of 67, he was appointed professor at the University of Siena. He liked to drink. I remember because I met him in Cambridge when I was he liked to paint and drink red wine. In Siena, perfect, you can drink it. But actually his best work came out in Siena. But he became very well known because he developed a very simple, non-linear, physical, from mathematical physics, model of mass data. And he showed that, that was in 1967, in a book in honor of another famous Cambridge economist called Morris Dobb, who died then. He showed that the cycle of mass can be an equilibrium cycle, the limit cycle with equilibrium, because this process can continue forever. Every time you have you have accumulation, grow all the labor into production, wages rise, you substitute, you get more advanced technology, okay? You create, unemployment is created, firms go bankrupt, then again, the process starts on an expanding basis. And mathematically, you can define it as a limit. Limit cycle means a cycle that repeats itself like this, okay? That's what it is. There's a limit cycle. Yes, but only if this thing doesn't change. So you keep alpha given. If alpha changes, then there is a different story. And this is what Marx believed, that alpha would change. What Marx argued, and this is another controversial part of Marx, because it doesn't necessarily, okay, is that, okay, this happens year in, year out, every cycle. So you assume a limit cycle, like Richard Goodwin. not so easy. Yeah, you're not out of the woods yet, okay? And you won't be out of the woods. You will not be, you think you're out of the wood, you're not out of it. Why? Because to introduce new technology in order to make the system more automatic, more mechanized, you will have to undertake investment. It's not that new technology comes like, manna from heaven, Moses that sent manna to the primitive tribes there, down there in Sinai. It's not like that, which never happened anyway. They were never in Sinai, there was no such thing. It's a story, it's the story of the Bible, which is a complete fantasy. Yeah. Archaeologists have never found anything, it never happened, you know that? There was never crossing of the desert, there was never crossing of the Red Sea. Well, never, okay? There was never an escape of Jews from Egypt, you know that? Never. Because Canaan was Egyptian. How can you escape from Egypt to Egypt? It's actually Israeli archaeologists found this out, and they've completely destroyed the entire business. That's quite completely destroys the entire business. And the entire story that the Jews go back to their own land, there's nothing. It's completely nonsense. And anyway, Marx says you are not out of the woods because technology does not come down like Moses threw manna onto the people down there. In order to have new technologically advanced machinery, you need to undertake investment. This means that the relationship between investment and output, or capital and output, must increase, okay? If you don't build new machinery like a magic wand, so you have to invest. You have to invest in research, you invest in new inventions, you invest in all sorts of things, you have to invest more in order to have a more technologically advanced machinery. Therefore, Marx argued, this thing will actually will go down because alpha output is alpha k, okay? So 1 over alpha is k over y, okay? Capital output ratio. So if the capital output ratio goes up, more capital per unit of output to generate new technology. For this to go up, this must go up as well, because they're equal. This means that alpha goes down. You follow? This means that it becomes that you need more, so you need more investment, more capital per unit of output, and you hope to get it back by increasing the productivity of labor by using the more advanced technology. Yeah? And Marx says, look, that while there is a limit to the increase in the productivity of labor, and this limit is determined by the amount of hours that workers can give free to the capitalists. They cannot give 100% of their hours free to the capitalists. They must retain something for themselves, okay? Whereas there is no real limit to the increase to the fall in alpha. Therefore, he argues that from cycle to cycle, the increase in the capital output ratio will lead to a situation whereby the increase in whereby the fall in N, more mechanized machinery, fall in N is less than the rise in than the fall, sorry, is less than the fall in alpha. Alpha falls because you need more capital per unit of output in order to generate more technologies. This will lead you to more mechanized, more automated machinery, therefore less N. But what he argues is that the rate at which the capital output ratio increases is more than the rate at which mechanization increases. And so this leads to an overall fall in the rate of profit. So Marx's long-term view of the capitalist economy, this is the real death knell, the death element of the capitalist economy, is that they can be successful in the cycle in getting out, etc. Yet they cannot be successful in sorting themselves out in the long run because they are subjected to the law of the falling rate of profit. Okay? That the rate of profit can fall because you need more and more investment per unit of output in order to generate the technological increases that will give you the greater productivity. And this increase in the investment in the capital per unit of output will exceed, will be stronger than the gain in productivity, than the gain in mechanization. And hence, the economy will be subjected eventually to a systemic fall in the rate of profit. This formulation that Marx created partly in chapter 25, but the other part of volume 3 of Capital is really devoted also to this issue. That has been a disaster for Marxian economics because it created a complete fixation with falling rate of profit. Okay? It's not important now, it's not important, just forget it. Because this is not necessarily true. It's not true because it's simply, there is no reason why alpha should not increase. There is no reason. So the falling rate of profit is a very shaky, and Marx was also aware that there was a problem because he kept listing all the what he calls counter tendencies that this may not happen, the fall rate in the rate of profit may not, and eventually he said, eventually he went for the falling rate of profit. But why? Because he was subject to Ricardo. He was he was subject to Ricardo's influence all the time because Ricardo also has a falling rate of profit. Through what? Through the rent that squeezes, right? Profit. The rate of profit falls and the economy gets to a stationary state in Ricardo. And he was really under sort of an hypnotic effect of Ricardo, and he really, but all of them believed in the 19th century, all the economists believed that the rate of profit was a fact. Okay, that the falling the rate of profit was not something that has to be discovered, but it has to be explained. That was a fact, like you have, lightning and stuff like that, and you have to explain that it's not something from God, but it's electricity, magnetic fields, and so forth. The same thing, they thought that the falling rate of profit was a reality, and that it had to be explained theoretically. That was the real. And Marx is in the same way, but the person who originated the falling rate of profit story was not Adam Smith, which pushed it in the very long term, but was Ricardo with the story of the land, of the rent squeezing out profit. Marx says, no, everything happens within the capitalist system. It doesn't happen with rent and stuff like that. Even rent is profit. So everything is endogenous, is internal to the capitalist system, and he generated his own fall in the rate of profit story. But that's not necessarily valid because Nothing prevents alpha. Nothing prevents from making cheaper machinery. So there is no reason why machinery, the cost of machinery should always be rising. There is no reason for that. Okay? You understand that? There is no. So this is a very weak part of the business that Marx also was cagey about. But of course, other type of Marx is fundamentalist. Very fine. One of them, Simon Noble, a bunch of people. They believe in the falling the rate of profit. It's really, I don't think it's a story. But besides this, Marx story is very strong. What the fundamental problem with Marx is not the falling rate of profit in money. And I'll finish it. It's not the falling rate of profit. The fundamental problem with Marx is the problem of demand. Demand. Yeah, of demand. That's the problem. Yeah, that's the problem. We'll discuss that tomorrow. And tomorrow we see each other still, right?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. All right. By the way, listen, I have sent an email to just about everyone that you should, those of you who don't have a Moodle account, you should get the Moodle account, because I went to the list with Antonio, and so many of you don't have it yet, because I posted a letter by Johann that I think you should read. Read the first part, Socrates, Ricardo, and Marx. That's and then the neoclassics leave it out when he talks about neoclassical economics. We get to later. Okay?
There's no section in the paper of everything you did today.
Yeah. No, this is my lecture notes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Which is there. And I also sent you the library channel.
Yes. Thanks a lot.
Yes. It was not library code, it was library
Johann, do you download those things that you told me yesterday? Because I tried to do it and I cannot get it.